Okay, so the title of my talk, Schema-Consistency Bias and Mental Illness Stereotypes. This is actually an extension of work done by Mary Beth Hunsaker in her 2016 ASR article. And I'm looking at how schema-consistency bias influences how individuals transmit information interpersonally about others with mental illness. So quickly, schema-consistency bias is the tendency for individuals to remember information about others that's schema consistent and to filter out or change information that is schema inconsistent. And here I look at a particular type of cultural schema. I look at stereotypes about individuals with schizophrenia. So my research question, let me scroll down here, whatever. So my research question is, do individuals transmit more stereotype consistent information to others about individuals with schizophrenia than stereotype inconsistent information? So the way that I operationalize stereotype consistency is by using affect control theory's deflection score, as done in previous work. So to answer this question using affect control theory, I conducted a serial transmission study using participants from Amazon Mechanical Turk. I wrote a narrative about an individual with schizophrenia interacting with a bunch of other identities, and I had 50 respondents read my original narrative, do the little distractor task, and then retell it. And I had another set of 50 people read those retellings and retell it, and so on. So only the first, so it's kind of like the game of telephone. And only the people in link 1 saw my original narrative. So in the narrative, I include 8 total ABO events. I use 4 high deflection events and 4 low deflection events. So the high deflection events are the stereotype inconsistent events, things that we wouldn't expect for someone with schizophrenia, and the low deflection events are stereotype consistent. And what I do is I had 2 coders read through each narrative and code whether each of these 8 events were maintained across links or lost or transformed. So a really common one was the mother harasses a schizophrenic person, and that was very often changed to woman, so from mother to woman. So I had those, and if there were any added events, that was also coded, which there were some added information. So I'm still in the middle of an analysis, but there's a couple of findings that I think are useful to mention here. And the first comes from my pre-testing. So in my pre-test, I had 50 participants not in my original study. Oh, I'm almost done. I had 50 people not in my main study look at a set of about 20 ABO events, some of which are in my narrative and some of which weren't. And I asked them to rate them on a scale from 1 to 5, how unexpected and bizarre or expected and typical each ABO event was. And so we see here, so we see here that on average, the high deflection events were rated as more unexpected and bizarre, and the low deflection events were rated as more expected and typical. And the correlation between affect control theory's deflection score and my participants' rating of each statement was -0.92. So we do find that deflection is a good operationalization of stereotype consistency, which does correspond with Mary Beth's previous findings. So for my main study, I have 2 main findings right now. I actually find that across links, generally the same number of high and low deflection statements are maintained across links. And there's pretty big attrition from my main narrative to link 1, which is common. So most stuff is forgotten, but there's not a huge difference between whether it was high or low deflection. However, when you add in transform statements, there's a significant number of high deflection statements that are transformed more so than low deflection statements. And like I mentioned, a typical transformation is from like mother to woman. So my next steps, 30 seconds, my next steps are to see how these transformed high deflection statements are changing the overall deflection for the narrative across links. And what I've found preliminarily is that the deflection is actually decreasing as people tell the story. So the narratives are becoming more stereotype consistent. Thank you.